Welcome to Sound the Horne Sports Show. I'm so excited to host this groundbreaking program that will broaden the Jackson sports scene's awareness regionally and nationally. My goal is to highlight sports in Jackson, the state of Mississippi, and nationally by utilizing my 25 years of Division I athletic administration knowledge, and my guests will be experienced leaders in sports. The guest on the show will share a behind-the-scenes, unique, and informative glance of the world of sports. Please join me every Monday and Friday from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. on WeBelieveDigital.com. Welcome to the Sound the Horne Sports Show. I'm your host, Derek Horne. So glad to have you with us today. And I have a special guest with me today, and that's going to be Mr. Tim Duncan. Mr. Tim Duncan is the Vice President for Athletics at the University of New Orleans. How you doing, Tim?
What's going on, D. Horne? I'm doing great. Thank you for having me today.
Well, I appreciate it, and just kind of thanks for being a part of the show. And what we're trying to do is not only talk about the sports scene here in Jackson and the state of Mississippi, but also talk about what goes on nationally. And I thought that it would be great to bring you on to share that insight that you have, and also to just kind of give us some updates on what's going on down there in the Big Easy. So how we'll start today and what we usually do, if you would just tell us a little bit about yourself, high school, hometown, where you grew up, and also kind of tell us some of the sports you participated in high school as well.
Yeah, well, thank you again for having me on the show, man. I appreciate it. I'm glad that you have this platform and you're doing really well, and so I'm proud of you and I'm happy to be a guest. I'm born and raised in Memphis, so not that far from Mississippi. As you know, it's on the border. Both of my parents are from Mississippi. My mom was from Horne. My mom was out from Holly Springs. And my dad was from Bahia. So they naturally migrated to Memphis, when they were young. And I grew up there. Went to Melrose High School right there, and I grew up playing football as a youngster, and then switched and ran track, high jumps and basketball. And I was fortunate enough to stay home and play at what was then Memphis State University. And it was the only place I wanted to play, man. You remember back in the 80s how strong that team was. So I was fortunate enough to get an offer to stay home and play. And that was, my total dream for sure.
Yeah, well, being from that area, particularly playing at Ole Miss and spending a lot of time in Memphis, there was some good basketball in the Bluff City at that time. In some
Absolutely.
of the biggest rivalry games that we have, truly, it's not like it is now. But back in the day, that Memphis Ole Miss basketball game in the Mid-South Coliseum or down in Tad Smith, those were some barn burners. I can still remember Doom Hayes and Bobby Parks and Keith Lee, Andre Turner and Baskerville Holmes. It was something special. But Memphis has always been strong in basketball. And when you were in high school, who were some of the stronger programs and players you played against?
Everybody, all those legends you mentioned, we played against in the summer league in high school. Todd Day was the best person in our class. Ernest Smith played with me in Memphis. Orion Watson did too. Tony Madlock, my high school and college teammate. Obviously Penny was very good. Todd Day played at Arkansas. Rowley played at Oklahoma. Travis Butler played at Wyoming. Mo Cannon played at Arkansas. Maurice Cannon played at Arkansas. John Matthews played right there. He played at Kirby, but he played at Ole Miss. And David Midlick played there too. He was on my AAU team my junior year, I think his senior year. Ben Spiva. It was a plethora. Tony Wendis, who had probably a 20-year pro career over in England. So, yeah, it was a ton of great basketball talent. Fortunately for us, we kept a lot of that talent at home. You couldn't get everybody, but by the time I graduated my senior year, we had 9 or 10 guys on the team from Memphis or the Memphis area. So we were homegrown and had some success by being to the Elite Eight in one game from the Final Four.
Yeah, I can remember when Dana Kirk was the head coach at that time, and if you took a look at his roster, other than Keith Lee coming from West Memphis, Arkansas, and I think it was a player by the name of Dunn from North Carolina. Everybody else was from the city of Memphis. And,
right. Big D, Derek Phillips was from St. Louis. You remember Big D, Derek Phillips?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was from St. Louis, but other than that, everybody was from Memphis or close to Memphis.
Yeah, yeah. So when you take a look at your time in high school, how did you feel that might have prepared you for the collegiate ranks?
Well, in Melrose, as you know, is a traditional all-black high school in Memphis. It's one of the oldest black high schools in the state of the South. So it was founded that way, and it was at that time. So I think what it did, it gave me a chance to understand the pride that people had in the community. Orange Mound was at one point the largest African American community in the country, only rivaled by Harlem. So there's a lot of pride that went with that. So my dad graduated from Melrose. Tony Madlock's dad, Coach Finch, my college coach. My high school coach was Ronnie Robinson. He graduated from Melrose. So we were at that time, there was a lot of pride in our community in producing successful men, no matter what the profession. So Tony Madlock's dad wasn't an athlete, but he was an attorney, and his brother, Tony Madlock's uncle, is a physician. And then, there are, tons of other scores of other successful people who went to Melrose, and they gave back and make sure that we understood that tradition and heritage.
Yeah, one of my teammates, a couple of my teammates, but one in particular that stands out to me, and you might remember his name was Eric Laird.
Oh yeah, I remember Eric Laird. He was a bad boy with the East.
And when I played, my role was to at Ole Miss was to guard the best offensive player on the other team. And somebody asked me, well, who's the toughest person you guard? I said, I guard Eric Laird every day. Eric was a beast.
He was, man. He was a player, no doubt about it.
He was the epitome of Memphis basketball. And
right.
I don't know if you had a chance to play in it, but did you play in the Bluff City Classics during the summer? And if you
of
did,
course.
talk about that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it was awesome, man. I remember playing against Gerald Glass, an Ole Miss legend, who he scored like 50 points on us. I think I might have had 32. In the Bluff, it wasn't a whole bunch of defense played. But it was fun, man, just playing against local stars from different colleges and even guys in the NBA. It was a wonderful time to be playing pickup basketball in Memphis. But the Bluff City Classic, man, where all the legends played. I grew up going to those games as a kid. My dad used to take me to them, and I got a chance to play in it, so it was pretty cool.
It was so amazing. I think that was what kept basketball so vibrant in Memphis. Because I can remember I played in it for two or 3 years, and it was almost like going to the Mid-South Coliseum because everybody was there. You had players from Southern Miss, Ole Miss, Arkansas State, Lamar.
UAB, remember Steve Mitchell and those guys?
Yeah. So it was something special. When you came out, or when you were making your decision, what schools recruited you out of Memphis? Out of high school, out of Melrose.
Yeah, there were several, but the ones that I was serious about was Marshall and UAB. I actually committed to Coach Bartow at UAB, and then my high school coach, Dorsey Sims, who was there in my 10th grade year, was an assistant at Memphis, and he called me and said, "Boy, you're coming here," and that was the end of the story. So I just did what he said, and I was fortunate to that they made that call because I was off to UAB, and and no telling where my life would be right now. But I'm really happy to have stayed at home and played in front of my family with all the friends that I mentioned earlier.
Well, what's amazing is when you take a look at Lee Hunt was at UAB, and he was my coach, but then also Gene Bartow. Gene Bartow coached at Memphis, so. When Gene Bartow started the program at UAB, he already knew about Memphis.
Yeah, he did.
There were a number of players from Memphis that migrated to UAB to play for him. And
absolutely.
Go ahead.
No, absolutely right, man. McKinley Singleton, Goody is what we called him, one of the purest shooters I ever met. Steve Mitchell, I still don't know why he didn't have a 10-year run in the NBA. He was Kyrie before Kyrie with the way he could finish and the handle that he had with the basketball. So, there were a ton of guys from Memphis who, actually played down there and thrived. So that was they definitely had a pipeline that I was considering.
Well, what's so funny? My roommate on my recruiting trip to UAB was Steve Mincy.
Right. Yeah.
And Steve was a beast. Steve probably was your prototypical forward. I'm talking about he had it all, but he was very athletic. big, strong, and played internationally for a long time as well. But he was another
Yeah,
great
he did.
Memphis product.
Right, right. There's some players came out of Memphis, and Coach Bartow definitely got a few.
Well, I like to ask this of my guests. If you could go back and share some advice with yourself as a teenager, what would you say to Tim at 17, 18 years old?
Be a little bit more open. I stayed within my community, so I pretty much hung with my teammates or my fraternity brothers, and folks like that. I didn't necessarily cultivate relationships with other students on campus, and I try to encourage students to do that now. Those are the folks that you could work with down the road. You can do business partners. That could help you with no matter what in a whole bunch of ways. And I wasn't savvy enough at that point to take advantage of the relationships that I could have built. So that would be the only thing. I like everything else. I think helped shape me who I am, but I really wish that I could tell myself to reach out and do some things out of your comfort zone a little bit earlier in my life.
It's amazing you said that, because about half of the guests that we've had on have shared that. And I think it makes a big difference, because if you want to be successful, knowing people is great, but having relationships are better.
Right,
Because
absolutely.
with relationships, you have an opportunity to that's where you cultivate, get to know each other, and then you have a better opportunity to make sure things can prosper for you. And I'm sure in what you've done, you can attest to that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I learned a little bit later, and it's been valuable for me. So to have started that much earlier, could have been a big game changer. But I'm glad I picked it up when I picked it up, and able to meet great folks like you to, to discuss, challenging situations and just pick your brains from time to time. So I'm glad I picked it up when I did, but it could have gone a long way further if I had done it earlier, for sure.
Well, you and I have met years ago, but I can tell you one thing: if there's anything that you've mastered relationships. And I've watched you grow when you've done that, and your relationships are giving you opportunities to participate in other platforms, not only in your conference, but also with the NCAA. And I applaud you for that, because when we go to conferences or when we go to different places, you probably are one that I can say the prototypical uh, uh, person to watch, to see how you build those relationships. You pull people together. You're very cordial, but also too, you know how to connect with people. And I've seen you do that. And if you didn't do it in high school, I tell you one thing: you got it down to an art now.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it, man. I've always been kind of a gregarious person at times, and I didn't know how to utilize it to reach across, different rooms. But somewhere along the way, I was able to pick it up. Thank goodness. I've been a lot more intentional about it lately. So I appreciate you, saying that for sure.
Well, you said one word that I like to use a lot, and it being intentional. And a lot of
Yeah,
times we don't really understand what intentional means, and it's not. All words have a unique definition, but when you're intentional, you're focused, you're deliberate, you're positive, and you're trying to make things happen. And as we get ready to go out of this first quarter and go into the second quarter, we're going to pick up on Tim being at the University of Memphis, or back then Memphis State, but we're going to take a minute to give our sponsors a chance to share a message.
Hi, I'm Q Talicia Garrett. I am here to introduce our New South Development and Training Outreach Hour every Tuesday at 2 p.m., giving you information on how to become a part of the programs through USDA and Farm Service Agency. We can be reached at 678-779-9468. We can also be found online at newsouthoutreach.com.
SGECOVIDsolutions.com is paving the way forward for a safer city government, delivering cutting-edge biosecurity and biosafety protocols developed internationally by top virologists and scientists using an all-natural cleaning solution, killing COVID-19 on contact like no other product on the international market. For more information, please call 1-800-281-9080 or visit us online at SGECOVIDsolutions.com. Let SGECOVIDsolutions.com provide innovative rapid facilities testing and world-class state-of-the-art state-of-the-art biorisk safety protocols for all of your coronavirus needs. Call 1-800-281-9080 or visit us online at sgecovidsolutions.com.
Welcome back to the second quarter of the Sound the Horn Sports Show. We have Tim Duncan, Vice President of Athletics at the University of New Orleans, and we're going to jump into, I like to call it Memphis State. I loved it so much when Penny put those guys back in that Memphis State jersey during this season. It made a big difference, and institutions have to make adjustments as they grow, but at the end of the day, I'm still going to call it Memphis State.
Yeah, for sure, man. You got to connect that to that legacy, for sure. I think it was smart to identify yourself as University of Memphis so you can be similar to other urban institutions like Louisville and Cincinnati and places like that. But, it'll always be Memphis State, and Penny does a really great job of honoring that heritage of the school that we all grew up knowing. So it keeps it, in the forefront of people who are much younger than us. Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your time at Memphis State. Tell me a little bit about some of the toughest opponents that you had to face and your teams faced back in the day. Because, back in the day, that's when Louisville and Cincinnati and all those teams that have kind of migrated in different locations were in your conference. So kind of share a little bit about some of those battles that you had.
Yeah, man, it was a tough conference, like you mentioned. Louisville, Cincinnati, South Carolina, Florida State, Southern Miss. It was just tough, man, and they had a lot of tough. So I got a chance to play against Purvis Ellison and Felton Spencer, Cornelius Holden, one of the highest jumping men ever on that Louisville team, Clarence Witherspoon and Southern Miss, who was a pro for many years. Malik Sealy, we played in the tournament in Madison Square Garden. Malik Sealy played at St. John's, and he was my height at 6'8", and I thought he was the quickest man I'd ever met in my life because I never got beat baseline, and that's the only time. And in my 4 years, I got beat baseline because Malik Sealy was he was special. So he ended up dying a few years later in a car wreck after he made the NBA. But he was really special. Todd Day, we played Arkansas. Todd Day and Dwight Stewart and Todd Day and Oliver Miller and Lee Mayberry and that crew. They were really good. Allen Houston probably was real. Obviously a long time NBA and all pro. So yeah, we had some great battles with many of those teams, man. And it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I can remember, like I said, to me, it was the Mid-South Coliseum brings back so many memories. And I think at that time, is that where you played your home games?
Yeah, it was. I played in there 3 years. In my senior year, we moved to the Pyramid.
So tell me the difference between playing in the Mid-South and going to the Pyramid, and how did that maybe affect the crowd or game day experience for not the fans? Because as a player, sometimes the venue is your friend. So kind of maybe share that.
Right. The Mid-South Coliseum was about 11,500, which at the time was, pretty big in college basketball. But the Pyramid, I think, was 21,000. And so that first year we had Penny and the whole nine. We opened up with DePaul, who was, if they weren't ranked, they were highly regarded. So, we packed them in that first year. I moved away shortly after graduating college and didn't get a chance to see them play a bunch in the Pyramid after that. But that first year, it was rocking. It was about 22,000 every night, and Penny was doing his thing. And that amount of people, to being able to share this city's university with that amount of people, I think was very special. So it quickly became a great home court advantage for us too.
Well, and I think that's the thing about the city of Memphis and the University of Memphis / Memphis State, even with the FedEx Forum now. I think it is a recruiting advantage. I think it's a great venue, but it's a great relationship with the city of Memphis and the University of Memphis to give those teams that platform. And one thing that you mentioned Penny Hardaway. If you could maybe share some of the unique things that you saw him do as a college athlete.
Man, he was just special. He was good at everything. He was great at ping pong. He was great at golf. He was great at video games. He was so competitive. If you beat him in ping pong, he'd play you 9 more times just so he can get a win. So I think that was the best thing about his competitiveness. And he was just special, man. He was super unselfish, a little bit too much so. I think I remember a critical point in our season. we were, middling around 500, and we basically, the seniors told Penny, hey man, you got to shoot for us to win. He was passing too much. He was too unselfish. And, once he started to do that, man, we took off and made a deep run in the tournament. But he was super special. He was, almost as big as Magic Johnson at 6'7". He handled the ball as a point guard, and he was super, super athletic. He had springs in his legs, so he didn't have to catch you slipping. You can be right there waiting to jump before he jumps, and he still rises up over you and dunks it hard. So as you can ask Ewing and some of those guys. I mean, he was a phenomenal talent.
I tell you, one person that I really enjoyed getting to know, and it was so weird, Elliot Perry. Elliot and I were flying to Charlotte, North Carolina together, and we sat down and talked, and we were talking, and what was so unique, we got off of the plane, and I see all these professional athletes, basketball players, and what was happening, they were filming that movie with Whoopi Goldberg in Charlotte that weekend.
Oh, wow.
And Elliot was playing in it, but tell me a little bit about Elliot, because I think a lot of people, when you take a look at him, you're being like, did he play basketball? But just kind of share what kind of player he was.
Well, I met Elliot when I was in the 10th grade. He was in 11th. We played on the same AAU program at Ottawa. So he was 6 feet, 150 pounds, literally. But he was dynamic. He averaged 37 points a game in high school. I saw him destroy guys on the AAU circuit, known pros like Mark Macon and Emerson Hunt and Greg Anthony and those guys. So he was really good. He was so quick. But the thing I remember about him the most is he's the hardest worker I ever met in my life. He worked extremely hard on his craft. He didn't rely on his natural God-given ability. He maximized everything he could, and that led him to a 9 or 10 year NBA career at 6 feet. At that point, he maybe got up to 165, 170, maybe, but he had a career at that frame, man. Just because he's smart, he totally changed his role and became a traditional pass first point guard because he knew what it took to be a part of a winning team. He played with Barkley and the Suns and those things. He played in Milwaukee, he played in New Jersey, but he knew what it took for him to stay in the league. So he was smart. He didn't care about trying to resurrect his college career. He wanted to be a pro, and he had to change his game, and he did it.
He reminded me a lot of Rod Barnes, who I played with at Ole Miss. Just a true floor general. When you watch him play, he didn't. I said, when you watch a great player, they don't make useless plays. Every play they make is intentional. It has meaning behind it, and I just enjoy watching him play. I got a chance to play against him, I think, 1 year in the summer league when he was a freshman. But just getting to know him and watching him grow has been great. Now, there's a name that I'm going to share with you that made a big impact in Memphis as a student athlete, as assistant coach, and then your head coach, and that's Larry Finch. And if you would tell me what kind of impact did Larry Finch have on you?
I mean, he was patient, man, because I was a little rough around the edges coming out of Melrose, and he was way more patient with me than he should have been, and I appreciate that. And lessons I learned, it was to give kids second chances, which I'm able to do now as athletic director. I see the student athletes who aren't as focused as they could be, but see the potential in them as he saw in me. So I learned about self-accountability because I was at that point pointing my finger outward when I didn't play as much as I wanted to, but realized a few years later that I should be pointing it inward in myself. So I try to share those lessons that I learned from him about his patience and grace and just wisdom with young people today, for sure.
Well, I think you hit on a great point, and a lot of athletes need to realize sometimes it's not the coach. We can blame it on the coach, but the first person we need to take a look at is do a self-analysis and then say, okay, what can I do? Hard work always wins out, regardless of whatever you do. And that's why sometimes I'm like you when I'm on a campus. I try and take a look and see, okay, what is the kids' motivation? How can we help them? And everybody deserves a second and sometimes a third chance.
Right.
And I think that's something that you can applaud Coach Finch for doing that, because there's so many coaches that you and I've dealt with that they don't even give kids second chances.
Right.
I think that's a tough thing for athletic administration.
Right. They'll throw you out with the bathwater, man. So, I think about those things, and it hurts me when we lose a student to, something that could have been preventable, and we look at our programming and what we could have done better so we can help better support these students. And so, they have to look inward too. And I tell them that too. You have to look inward. You have to own your mistakes. You can make a mistake, just don't make the same one twice, and don't make a whole bunch of, variety of mistakes. So, I try to do my best to impart the lessons that Coach Fentz bestowed upon me for sure.
How did your time, you mentioned a little bit, but how did your time playing at Memphis State prepare you for life after basketball?
Yeah, I think it was that, man. I think just learning personal accountability. I think team sports is good at that. You watch film and the tape don't lie, right? The eye and the sky don't lie. So you learn to be able to critically review your performance. So I think that's what I learned in college. So I can, again, not try to make the same mistake over and over, and be critical, be able to look at my game and my staff and my team with the critical eye, with the goal of understanding what the goal, setting the vision, and being able to go and accomplish that. So those are things that I learned in college for sure.
Did you ever think about getting into coaching?
No, man, I didn't. That wasn't my thing. I didn't want to have to coach I don't want to have to coach a player like me. That could have been, dangerous for my career as a coach if I ran against a kid like me. So I had a different path, and that's okay.
Yeah, well, talking about that path, how did you transition into your role in corporate America? I think you've had a great career there. How did that last day Memphis get into that your professional career?
I mean, when I talk to student athletes today, they're so much focused. They're focused on what they want to do and kind of know their career path. I did not. I graduated, and literally the next day I said, "Oh shit!" I didn't have any clue of what my next step would be. So I moved to Houston with my uncle, who's like a big brother to me, and played a little semi-pro basketball at Miami Tropics of the USBL. Played a bunch of pickup with the Rockets and things of that nature, trying to get that out of my system, and learned very quickly that I wasn't going to get a career out of basketball. So I started to work different jobs, and I worked enough to know I needed a career. So I ended up going to Grambling State. My brother was played basketball at Grambling, and he told me about the sports administration program. So I think that night I researched it and went to visit, and then I signed up and packed all my stuff from Houston, and I moved to Grambling and went to grad school. So from graduate school, I got a great education, made some great colleagues, and got an internship at Russell Athletic. And then after the internship, they hired me on full time. So I was able to translate that internship into an opportunity to work full time. And then I worked at RJ Reynolds Tobacco Company on NASCAR with the Winston brand when it was Winston Cup, doing a bunch of events with NASCAR. Then I moved over to other brands doing concerts and all kinds of other events. Started an event marketing company, and RJ Reynolds was our first client with some folks that I worked with, and we started to have a pretty successful business. And during that time, I moved back to Memphis and went to them and asked them, can they support our new business by sending some donors our way. And at the end of the conversation, they offered me a job in development, or an opportunity to interview for a job in development. I jumped on it, and the rest, as they say, is history. I've been in college athletics ever since that day in 2007.
Well, I want to go back to, how was your experience working with Russell Athletics, and then taking a look and seeing how the athletic apparel business is just blown up?
Yeah, it was interesting, man. I learned because Russell was prided itself on making everything in America. So we had tackle twill machine screen print presses right there in our offices in Columbus, Georgia. So I worked in the licensed product division. So we made branded items for Clemson, Auburn, Georgia Tech, and then for Major League Baseball and things of that nature. So it just taught me the value of having a quality product, because the quality was a lot better than some of the other competitors. Nike and Reebok was really big at that point, and they did a lot of theirs overseas. So one of the things that we understood was quality, but we couldn't compete with price, and I think that eventually caught up with Russell Athletic.
And I think about that because I know the uniforms that I played in college, my sweats, all the stuff that we had was all Russell. And Russell had, Russell was a beast. And I think you can remember this. I don't know if you do or not, but when I was at Florida A&M, Russell was bought out by Fruit of the Loom.
Right.
And when Fruit of the Loom bought out Russell, what they started doing, they started migrating away from athletic apparel specific for universities and start going to stuff that they could sell in retail. And I tell you, some of the, and I still have some of that Russell gear that I've had over the years. Russell still probably makes the best product, but they just got, I guess,
priced out of the market.
Yeah, when they got priced out of the market, and then when they sold to the Fruit of the Loom, it screwed up everything. I still think to this day, you know, I've been with Adidas, been with Nike, never been with Under Armour, but when I take a look at the quality of the apparel, Russell still, you know, it stands out to me.
Yeah, no, they definitely still have strong quality today. They, you know, mostly sell in kind of low-end retail areas, but the quality was phenomenal. They just got priced out of the market because you have to pay licensing fees and things of that nature, and that just became too expensive of a game to produce items here in America. Because, you know, obviously we pay our working staff a lot more, and rightfully so, we should. So it became tough to compete. So they just got out of that market when Fruit of the Loom bought it, for sure.
I can tell you, I knew when Georgia Tech, particularly when Auburn said they're going in a different direction, I knew it was tough for Russell then, because, you know, the Russell plant was right down the street from Auburn, you know, from Auburn, Alabama.
It was. You knew it was a major shift in what was going on internationally in the apparel game when, you know, the hometown school switched over.
And you're with Under Armour now?
Yes.
How's that been for you?
It's been good. We have great relationships with folks. When I was at Northeastern, I know we'll talk about that later, but we were at Under Armour, so I developed a relationship with them there. They were already under contract when I got here. We're looking at renewals now, and they are probably the prohibitive favorite to renew for sure, to renew with us.
Well, as we get ready to go into the third quarter, I think that it's been some interesting things. I think some people have really learned a little bit about how corporations work, you know, particularly when it comes to athletic apparel. You know, Nike is truly a beast, and Adidas probably has more of a global name than Nike. People don't realize that. So it's a big game. It's a big game. But what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and put a pin in this part of the program and get ready for the third quarter. And at this time, we're going to have our sponsors come in and share some information that's beneficial for you.
Advertise on WeBelieve.global, a brand new digital media platform. Share your brand with our audience on our many global live stream TV broadcasts and over the radio. For more info, visit WeBelieve.global or call 800-492-5186, option 1.
Welcome back to the third quarter with the VP of Athletics at the University of New Orleans, Mr. Tim Duncan, not to be confused with the Tim Duncan that played with the San Antonio Spurs. I know he gets asked that a lot.
Right.
But
absolutely, almost every day.
Huh? I'm sorry.
Almost every day. I get that.
One thing I want you to talk about, we mentioned a little bit, but kind of talk about that transition from working in corporate America to athletics.
Yeah, it was different, man. It's a lot slower in college athletics than it is in corporate. In corporate, if you have a great idea, you can implement it pretty quickly. Whereas in college athletics, it's a lot more buy-in. So you need to, you know, work with the president, sometimes the provost, obviously the CFO of the university. Being at a bunch of kind of mid-tier and smaller schools, it's a lot more consensus building. And we're not isolated in silos. So that process takes a lot longer than in corporate America, where if it was in your budget, if your boss said you can do it, you can get it done. So but it helps. I think that's a strength of mine, coalition building. and being able to articulate the messaging. So it works in our favor, but it's definitely about slow.
Well, you mentioned something that I experienced because I transitioned for working in transportation in corporate America to go to work on a campus.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, when you work in transportation, that's 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365. I'm talking, I've worked on Christmas. I've worked every holiday. So, you know, going from working in a corporate structure to working on a college campus, you know, I'm getting there in that first couple of months. I was about to run myself crazy, you know, because it's like when you tell me you need something done, I want to get it done, but you have to go through so many hoops but it helped because I did have a sense of urgency. I knew how to. It taught me how to pace myself. Always be prepared. You know.
No, it definitely does, man. You know, I think it gives you a different perspective. I found that it helped me when I went to talk to people working corporations or who own their own business that had been outside of college athletics. So I was able to identify with some of their challenges a lot more easily, and I think they helped, you know, create that bond. So I'm sure you saw that too.
Well, let's do this. We're going to go ahead and hit on your time at Memphis when I first met you, when you were executive director of the M Club. And what were some of the highlights of your time in that role?
I mean, we started an all sports reunion where we have brought all former student athletes back, and you know, for the spring football game, and had a barbecue and had a golf tournament, and you know, I think they still want some iteration of that today. That was pretty cool. You know, I asked Penny to make a donation, of which he did to the Penny Hardaway Athletics Hall of Fame that's named after him. It was my first large ask, and I made a case to him, and he thought that it added value, and he made the donation. So, you know, those were a couple of highlights of. We grew membership when I was there a ton, just you know, that we'd had before. So, I learned a lot. Bill Lansdale, who was over the associate AD over development, gave me some projects and a portfolio to build for student athletes. So I really cut my teeth in development and fundraising there in Memphis, you know, at home, which is cool.
Well, like I said, I can remember when we met because you and Ziggy came down and we went through the M Club room. And I think the thing that I do appreciate from that visit, and it's amazing, both you and Ziggy are now athletic directors.
And I mean, you were too. So none of us were at the time, but all of us found our way, man. And it is kind of special because what I didn't appreciate at that time is how hard it is to get to the chair. You know, because I moved pretty quickly once I got in, and you know, I didn't realize how difficult it is. So I mean, it is special that the three of us who were, you know, you were giving us a tour around campus, and you know, we were, you know, idealistic and trying to figure out our own way. And shortly thereafter, you became an AD, and then I did, and then Ziggy was on the second job now. So that's real cool.
When we take a look at your transition from Memphis to North Carolina, Wilmington, how did your Memphis experience prepare you for that?
Yeah, it prepared me, man, because Memphis is big boy basketball, right? And Wilmington is no way. In that town, they are king in that town. So they had come off successful run in the early 2000s with Jerry Wright and the coach at Clemson now. I can't think of his name, but he was on the staff there and was head coach. So it taught me how to run a staff. I was a leader for the first time. I was over the whole external area of UNC Wilmington. I learned, you know, through some trial and error too. So I got a chance to learn. We raised some money. But the number one thing I picked up there was how to lead other areas of which I didn't have experience in. So, you know, tickets and corporate sponsorships and marketing. I had done some of that in a different industry, but never at the college level. So I had to oversee all of those programs in addition to fundraising. And, you know, that's how I cut my teeth in the business.
What were some of your highlights there at Wilmington?
Yeah, we multiple six-figure gifts for a new school board, for just the athletic director discretionary fund. We helped hire a couple coaches who were successful there, and then made great relationships. It just taught me the power of I was the executive director of the Seahawk Club, so it taught me how to build a relationship within that board, how to sometimes deliver hard news to donors. I learned that there because when I was there, we didn't have very much success on the basketball court. So you have to learn how to carry a message even though things aren't going well. So that was a valuable skill that I still use to this day.
You know, you share something that I think a lot of people don't realize, and I share this with a lot of athletic directors. People just think an athletic director shows up and has a box and watches the game, and you know, don't have any problems, any issues. And when you take a look at it, the lower the division, or not, I don't want to say lower the division, but if you go from
the smaller,
you know, the smaller the institution, the more work AD does. You know, so
no doubt.
Transitioning from Wilmington to Payne College, what was that experience like?
Man, it was the best thing that could happen. I mean, that was the first time I was AD. It was a small school. I learned the nuts and bolts. I didn't know anything about internal operations. I didn't know anything about compliance, nothing about academics, event operations. I didn't know squat. I just knew how to raise money. So it gave me an opportunity to really learn the job in a low pressure environment. Had a great supportive president. So yeah, it was good, man. I got a chance to learn a ton there on the job, which prepared me moving forward.
When you take a look at conferences, and I know right now with your conference affiliation in Southland, when you take a look at the SIEC, when you were at Payne, what were some of the challenges that you see that conference experienced that maybe are still some challenges that they're seeing right now?
Revenue, I mean, at that level is very difficult. A Division II HBCU is difficult to raise revenue to be successful. So that, you know, is a problem that has existed for many years and probably will. Hopefully, it won't last forever, but you know, right now it's still a challenge. So, you know, increasing revenue and finding new streams of revenue is very critical.
Now, where you are right now, and I'm jumping ahead of the script a little bit, but is UNO's a public institution, right?
It is, yes.
Okay. Now, was Payne private?
Payne was private.
Okay. Now,
so I worked in my career. I worked in six institutions, two private and four public.
When you're working at a private institution, kind of what are some of the challenges that you see, or maybe advantages that you don't have at a public institution?
Well, it's interesting because I worked at two very different ends of the spectrum. I worked at Payne College, which is a HPCU, which have a ton of first generation students who attend there, and I worked at Northeastern University, which is 25,000 students. That's in Boston. That's high academic, top 40 in the country. So there are definitely some extremes, but the things that make them together is you can get things done easier at a private school because you have to get state approval from the board. So in theory, you should be able to move a lot more quickly than you can in a state or a public institution.
I've noticed that, and I think that's something that I always like to try and educate our viewers on, because all institutions don't have the same structure. They don't have the same governance. Right. Different states have different rules. And our fans sometimes, when they get antsy, they don't realize what athletic directors and presidents or chancellors have to deal with just to even keep the lights on. So as we get a chance and we go through to just educate our viewers, I just want them to have an understanding that when they're dealing with institutions, there's certain things that all of us have hoops we have to jump through.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Having been at multiple institutions like you get a chance to learn that along the way.
Yeah. Now, transitioning from Payne to Clayton State, how was that experience?
So it was good. I was still in Georgia. I moved from Augusta to Atlanta, went to a public institution that was in the university system of Georgia. So everything was a little bit more broad. It took a lot more coalition building. That was my first time interacting with board of trustees who governed the entire system. So at the time, I think there were 28 schools in the university system of Georgia. So I was, Clayton State was one of 28. So to get a chance to meet those successful men and women and try to articulate your message to them was a great lesson that I got a chance to learn that.
You know, how relationships are so unique. The former longtime basketball coach at Clayton State, who was the athletic director, his name was
Mason Barfield.
He's from South Georgia. He used to coach.
Oh, that's right.
He used to coach women's basketball at Lowndes High when my sister played at Brooks County. So
wow.
I've known him for a while, and he did a great job there. When I lived in Atlanta, in fact, I lived right around the corner from Clayton State. I would come over and visit with him and watch games, but he left a good footprint there at Clayton State, and it's amazing to see how they've evolved from Clayton State College to Clayton State University and what they do there in that community.
Yeah, I mean, it's always great when someone has a great vision that you can come in and kind of build upon. And I've been fortunate in all of my stops to experience that.
So we jumped from Clayton State up to Boston.
Yeah.
How was that experience up in Boston?
It was good, man. At Clayton State, I had interviewed for a couple of Division I AD jobs, and came second on a couple of occasions, and I thought I needed a little bit more from Division I, but I didn't know how to get there because I thought I'd have to be a deputy because I watched trends of ADs had come from deputy and not from senior associate anymore. So, I just kind of put my head down and kept grinding, and then I got a call from Jeff Coleman, someone that I'd known from, back in Memphis, who had just been named AD at Northeastern. And initially he asked me to give some recommendations on people for the job. I didn't even consider it was for me. Then he called me back a couple of weeks later and told me, man, I really want you in this deputy for external role. So it was an interesting challenge because what I learned from him was a sense of urgency. That dude is nothing if not urgent on everything he does. So, and he's super creative. So I learned a ton. In that 1 year there, I learned so much from him that I, utilized to this day. So I definitely appreciate him, extending the opportunity.
Well, there's one thing that you've done, and I don't know if you're still doing it, but share with us what was your thought process in developing the Emerging Administrators Academy, and just kind of give the premise of what that is.
Yeah, I wanted to, because I came from outside athletics and I had to learn once I got in, and I wanted to create a conference to help people from outside get athletics get inside. But what I quickly realized is that there are a whole bunch of people at the middle management space who don't know how to advance or don't know what it takes to advance or hadn't had a chance to experience true professional development. So, I mean, the cohorts started to quickly become people who were in middle management, from directors to assistant ADs to assistant directors, even GAs. And then beyond, associate ADs started coming. So it was a way to kind of help give back to the industry that I love so much. Unfortunately, after I left Clayton State, my time is not the same at Division I that was at Division II, but people still ask me about it, and I've had several inquiries to start it back. And at some point I will. I just haven't gotten to that stage yet.
Well, I tell you, I saw a number of people that participated in it and saw the curriculum and thought it was something worthwhile. And I think that, it's getting harder now because, when I started back in '95, you didn't have as many people as you have in athletics now. You have so many different people at the Division I level, particularly FBS. When you take an FCS and Division I AAA, it's a little different. Yeah. You still have to grind, but when you take a look at some of these budgets of $200 million, and having about 200 staff, it blows my mind on the number of people. Then that means the number of opportunities as well.
Right. Yeah, the sheer number of people in this business is massive. So it's probably needed as much as it was then. I've talked to, and I appreciate you and thank you for being a part of that, being a part of the faculty, to present to these young minds in our sport. So I think it was helpful, and at some point we'll bring it back.
Well, I hope you do, because I think that you always have to have. I call myself a lifelong learner, and if you stop what you've learned, you've also stopped your progress. You have to be mindful of what goes on around you, what's going on in the world. And it's so important to do those things, and you definitely need to know what's going on in your industry. So now as we get ready to go ahead and put a pin in the third quarter, we're going to see if we can make it a good fourth quarter. We're going to give our sponsors an opportunity to come in and share some information with our viewers.
Are you tired of living check to check and looking for residual income? We have just the opportunity for you. Join us on Saturday, the 25th of June in Jackson, Mississippi, as we discuss the sexiest industry in the world, travel. Let's turn your passion into profits, whether it's on a full-time or part-time basis. Please RSVP or text to 404-915-8626. We look forward to connecting and taking flight. See you soon.
SGECOVIDsolutions.com is paving the way forward for a safer city government delivering cutting-edge biosecurity and biosafety protocols developed internationally by top virologists and scientists using an all-natural cleaning solution, killing COVID-19 on contact like no other product on the international market. For more information, please call 1-800-281-9080 or visit us online at SGECOVIDsolutions.com. Let SGECOVIDsolutions.com provide innovative rapid facilities testing and world-class state-of-the-art biorisk safety protocols for all of your coronavirus needs. Call 1-800-281-9080 or visit us online at sgecovidsolutions.com.
Welcome back to the fourth quarter of the Sound the Horn Sports Show, and I'm here with my dear friend and fraternity brother, Vice President of Athletics at the University of New Orleans. And we're going to go ahead and try and see if we can close this fourth quarter out real strong. If you can, just kind of tell me a little bit about how your experience going from where you spent a lot of time in the South and then to go work up in Boston. How was that for you and your family?
Yeah, I mean, it ended up being a great life-changing experience because we had never lived, in the North before. And it's a lot different, obviously, but it was great to know that my family can build relationships wherever. And that was, I think, important for our kids. They went to totally new school with totally different demographics and were able to thrive there. And they want to go back and visit all the time. So I think that was important for us to show them a different side of the world. And then for me professionally, it just, it was a lot more resources. It was a high academic institution. I hadn't worked in that environment before. So, but my family and I think we showed we had some tremendous growth in the short time that we were there.
Well, I had a chance to go to Boston, and it's unique. I'm truly a Southern guy. Hadn't worked north of Atlanta, but I do enjoy traveling. And Boston is unique, and I'm a fan of history. So you can get lost in Boston with that history.
Yeah, one of the oldest cities in the country, man. It is, very historical. Positively and negatively, like most of the country. There's some great parts of history, particularly when it affects African Americans, and there's some bad parts as well, just like most places. So I didn't have any negative experiences there, but I know it has an ugly history, like a lot of our country that's unique with race, for sure. So yeah, it's just interesting the dichotomy of our country when it comes to the intersection of race and gender and all of that kind of stuff.
Did you get a chance to go to the bar that was Cheers was patterned after?
No, I didn't. I said many times, but I never got a chance to stop, unfortunately.
I was up there for a conference. I made it my business to get there. I still have the glass that I brought. Because it was just interesting at that time. I think I might have been 2 years in at Ole Miss, and I think Cheers was still kind of relevant at that time, and it was just great to get in there. I think got there right after the Boston Marathon, so we had lunch right there where the finish line was. The different things that you can see. I always enjoy just having those opportunities to see what I call history or some relevant cultural facts as well. Right.
Yeah, it definitely is a good place for that.
Now, there's something that happened during the time the George Floyd incident that happened to you, and you had an opportunity to share that with your experiences and what happened. If you don't mind, maybe just kind of share a little bit of that with our viewers and kind of share how that helped shape you grow, particularly some in your I guess, in leadership as well.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Like many, Black or African American men, my wife and I was walking to the store in Boston, in Newton, Mass, where we lived, and we fit the profile. So the police rolled up on me, 6 or 7 cars deep, guns drawn, and asked me did I commit a murder, and those type of things. So I mean, it was was a challenging situation. I think I didn't fully appreciate it until a few days later, because that was 5 days before George Floyd was murdered. And then one of my friends said, Tim, you know that could have been you? And that's when it hit me. And then I published a video that I wanted to create for my student athletes so they can understand that these types of things don't just happen to, what the media try to portray as thugs or, criminals. It happens to, the guy who leads this department. So I think they were appreciative of that. And, the question I had to myself was why I wasn't outraged as much. We had normalized being stopped while being Black so much that, I questioned myself. And from that platform, I did dozens at least of interviews with news organizations, media outlets around the country, and got a chance to share that message. So I wanted to turn something positive out of that negative situation, and hopefully it helped some people. It definitely opened some eyes of some of our white colleagues and non-Black colleagues who didn't think that type of thing happened to folks like us.
And the thing that's so unique, you're a couple inches taller than I am, and
Right.
and I tell you one thing that I always kind of try and share with some young Black professionals, but particularly men, is sometimes you're profiled and you don't even know it.
Absolutely.
So you have to put yourself in the position of, I know that I'm a tall Black man, and I usually don't try and have too much of an aggressive tone. I'm a soft-spoken kind of person, very aware of what goes on around. But I grew up in the South. In fact, in my community, my first grade year was the first year of integration in my community.
Wow.
So you grow up knowing you get the, I guess you say you get the talk.
Right.
So for me, it's been something that I keep in mind, and I think sometimes where you and I, or particularly maybe myself, it can be perceived a sense of weakness because you're showing that you're meek, but you're just understanding how you came up, and sometimes how, if you want to make it back home the next day, some things that you have to do.
Yeah. Our parents definitely taught us that. Just yes or no, sir. Don't make any sudden moves. Make sure you're using deferential tones, because our parents want us to come home alive. And, we still see that today, that that's a challenge for our country for sure. So, some people may think of that as me, but at the time, that was the response that we were taught by our parents, who came out of the generation of being water hosed and unleashed with dogs. And my parents were in PUSH, which is a national civil rights organization. And, while they wanted me to use my voice to speak up for myself in those situations with cops with guns, with fingers on the trigger, they definitely taught me to be deferential in that moment.
Well, Tim, I appreciate you sharing that, and I think that sometimes we all need to share some of those experiences where people realize that we're human. We do have challenges that occur, but then too, I do appreciate how you've used that platform to give some direction on how we as a society to try and address these issues. And again, I appreciate you for sharing that with our audience.
Okay, cool.
You had an aggressive 100-day plan when you took the job at the University of New Orleans, and kind of give a background on how you came up with that strategy, and then how well was it received?
Most people, when they start a new job, they want to meet the key players in whatever organization it is. So that was something that I didn't create, but what I wanted to do was brand that as an opportunity. I wanted to create a hashtag, which was 100 meetings, 100 days, and make sure that I document all of those meetings, because I knew I was coming into a new area, a new city here in New Orleans, and I didn't know a lot of people. And my hope was that, toward the end of the 100 meetings, people will be asking to get on, because we've done a great job of promoting it. So not only did we do a tweet and at each meeting, at the end of the week, we documented who all we met with. So it picked up steam really quickly. And by week 2, people were calling, asking for they to be a part of those meetings. So it worked better than I would have hoped. And then at the end of the 100 meetings, we had an event and invited all the people we met with. And then we talked them through what I learned in the 100 meetings. So I had a PowerPoint presentations that I talked to him. We had a giant cake, some refreshments, and I just talked to him about what I learned in those 100 days.
What were some of the things that you picked up? Because I do think it was great, and I followed you when you did it. What are some of the things that you picked up from the community that were valuable and are assisting you right now in what you're doing?
Yeah, that University of New Orleans athletics was still relevant. Everywhere I went, people knew, understanding, some of the history. They didn't know. There was a time when the University of New Orleans was considering going to Division II or III and did not. So there was a dark period where people didn't know where we met it out. There were still a ton of fans who supported the university. They wanted us to have radio, which we now have. They wanted us to do streaming, which we now do. They wanted to be more of an open kind of department with a lot more transparency. So we have annual meetings where we kind of discuss what has happened for the year with our constituency group. So a lot of things I learned in that first 100 days we still utilize right now.
Like I said, I followed and I watched, and I was just saying to myself, I know he's either taking a bunch of no-dos or drinking a lot of coffee, because every time I took a look, you were meeting with somebody, but I do applaud you for that, because I think that when you go, particularly the market you're in, you have the Saints, you have the Pelicans.
Right.
The Sugar Bowl by itself is just as big as any other event you can have. So I applaud you for that, because if you don't work hard to penetrate the market, people aren't going to consider you relevant. And I really feel that you've made yourself relevant in New Orleans.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a goal. To some extent, it definitely worked.
If you could, I've talked to a few ADs sitting in the chair. How challenging was it for you to navigate the pandemic and dealing with COVID-19 and still trying to run a department and keep your family intact?
Well, it was tough, man, because obviously we hadn't gone through anything like that before. Not since 1918 when Spanish flu was around, had anyone gone through that. And then, with the protocol the NCAA had, we wanted to make sure that our student athletes were safe first and foremost. So we had to put a ton of protocols in, like I'm sure you did, with testing, with cleaning, with isolation. And it was a difficult time, and a lot of our student athletes definitely had some mental health challenges because of the isolationism and things of that nature. So it was a difficult time, but I think we navigated it as well as anybody could.
Sitting in that chair when it happened, I had a team heading to Montgomery. We had to turn them around. Had a team that was getting ready to play a game in Montgomery. Had to get them back on the bus. Just logistics were just, I tell people, they ask, well, what did you feel? I said, you're numb, because all you're trying to do, when you go to bed, you're trying to figure out how to make it work. And when you wake up, you're still trying to make it work. And you're navigating a time in history that nobody has ever had a playbook for.
Right.
But I'm just glad that we were able to navigate it. And I think you hit up on a great point. The mental health aspect of athletes sometimes gets away from the general population, because they think you are just resilient, you're bulletproof, and they don't realize that these are just children trying to become grown-ups, trying to do grown-up things and get an education.
Yeah, it was a lot on them at the time. It was unprecedented for young people to be put in that position. So I'm glad we navigated it, and hopefully our student athletes can take some positive lessons from it and utilize it moving forward.
You had a chance to be a part of hosting the Final Four in the great city of New Orleans. How was that experience?
It was awesome, man. It was over 5 or 6 years. I wasn't here for all of it because you have to bid so far in advance, but I became a part of it a little over a year ago, and maybe a year and a half. And it was an amazing feat of just coordination and logistics. And the Greater New Orleans Sports Foundation, who makes up most of the local organizing committee, did a wonderful job at these big events. They do Super Bowls, they do WrestleManias, they do Final Fours. So they're used to doing that. So it was cool to see the inside behind the scenes of it.
What are some things that you can take away from that you might be able to implement into how you do just day to day or your game day, your logistics?
I think we have a pretty good game day logistics anyway. With Kim Gallo and her team who's with me. I think we do a really good job anyway. But one thing that we can take is just small things they do the small things really well. You know, how they break the locker room, how they allow you to take certain items from the locker room home that's branded with your stuff on it. Things of that nature, man. The little things that, you know, we don't necessarily think about. They do a great job.
With, you know, sports shows, I hear a lot of them talking about name, image, and likeness, and also, too, the transfer portal. From your vantage point and from your daily engagement with your coaches, how much has that impacted your program?
Well, the transfer portal has impacted it greatly, and I support it. I think student athletes should have the right to choose, and if they make a choice and they are left without a scholarship, that's part of growth. Some of my best learning opportunities have come from when I made a mistake that I had to figure out and scramble from. So I'm okay with the whole process. Some of them will make bad choices, and my hope is that they grow and learn from that choice and become a better adult. So I embrace the transfer portal, and I'm the type of person that think you get out of it what you think of it. If you're a glass half full person, you look, okay, we're able to take our messages to a whole new group of student athletes that we weren't able to get the first time. So that's wrong. And if you're a glass half empty, you'll be like, oh man, we're going to lose X, Y, and Z. So I'm a glass half full person. So I look at it as an opportunity. I look at it as an opportunity to, you know, build our program relatively quickly and introduce people to the city that I love and that I live in, to come and represent this university that I know is a great one. So I'm excited about that piece. With name, image, and likeness, we have just a few small deals with our student athletes. We don't have a collective. We don't have deals with them, but our student athletes have deals, smaller deals. We're working on trying to provide them with more opportunities there. We do a great job of educating them and monitoring what they do. We haven't been as effective at creating opportunities for them, and that's something I like to help them with for sure.
Well, I like your responses because I'm like you with the transfer portal. A coach can come in your office and say, hey, I got a job somewhere else. And if you don't have a competitive buyout in their contract, they can just up and go. But then the way it was set up for our athletes, you know, they don't have to sit out a year. And if it was conference to conference, schools or intro conference, you have to sit out 2 years in some conferences. So I agree with you on that, but I do think you brought up a great point. When you say you gone, you might not have that opportunity, you know, waiting for you. So that's the downside.
Right. It is. And, you know, people will learn some tough mistakes, but, you know, I think it'll level out at some point.
Yeah. Well, it all does. I just think that we're so caught up into the instant news right now. Everybody wants to make a statement. And, but I really just hope that we can just give things time to mature, develop, learn from your mistakes, and then just kind of move on. And but some shows, you know, I can't listen to, you know, because I'm like, you know, number one, you didn't play a sport. Number two, you never worked in athletics. And number three, you really don't know what you're talking about, you know.
Exactly.
But well, as we get ready to close, we see that Golden State has already punched their ticket. Who are you picking between Boston and Miami?
I'm picking Boston to not only beat Miami, but to win it all, man. I think Jason Tatum is very special. He's on a mission, and I think they're going to win it. So, I just hope they're competitive games and they go all seven. I'm okay with either team winning, but if they go all seven, then we have basketball as long as possible.
Yeah. Well, I've enjoyed watching it, and I think that, and I was telling you might appreciate this. It's hard for me to watch basketball now because fundamentals is not a part of it anymore.
Sure, right.
You know, fundamentals are really not a part of it. Now, one thing I did see last night, Golden State set up Thompson very well to get his shots off.
Right, they did.
They set some good picks. That's the first time I've seen that in a while in the NBA. But
yeah,
it's kind of hard for me to watch.
That Golden State is just picture perfect because they move the ball so well. Yeah. And I think that's why they're successful because they all share and everybody know they're going to get some touches.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Duncan, I really appreciate you taking out some time to visit with us today. It's always a pleasure visiting with you. And I just want to thank you for being a part of our show. And I wish you continued success on what you do in New Orleans.
Yeah, and thank you, D. Horne, for having me on here, man. I'm glad you got this platform to utilize your voice and your experience in our industry to get back to it as well. So I'm happy for you, and anytime you want me to come by, man, I definitely will.
Well, I appreciate it, and as we close, I hope everyone has a great day, and until the next time, make sure that you do what's best for you and your family through these trying times, and have a great day. Welcome to Sound the Horn Sports Show. I'm so excited to host this groundbreaking program that will broaden the Jackson sports scene's awareness regionally and nationally. My goal is to highlight sports in Jackson, the state of Mississippi, and nationally by utilizing my 25 years of Division I athletic administration knowledge, and my guests will be experienced leaders in sports. The guests on the show will share a behind-the-scenes, unique, and informative glance of the world of sports. Please join me every Monday and Friday from 9